The government gazetted the Social Security Contribution Levy on 21st June and waiting for the legislation in near future. And hence, it is important for us to get to know about the same. So to discuss this, today I am joining with Mr. Atula Ranavira, Senior Tax Consultant. Mr. Ranavira, another tax at a difficult time. So what is this new tax, Social Security Contribution Levy, and the rationality of introducing this tax at this difficult time?
Everybody knows that the country is in a very bad financial situation. If you'll see some figures, tax revenue to the GDP, we had 12.7% in 2019. It came down to 9.1% in 2020 and 8.7% in 2021. That means tax revenue has comes down materially. Then budget deficit, if we see the budget deficit, in 2019 we had 9.6% budget deficit. In 2020 it went up to 11.1%. In 2021 it went up to 12.2%. Then if you see the government debts to the GDP, in 2019 we had almost 87%. 2020 it went up to 100.6%, and 2021 it went up to 104%. 104.6%. By seeing these figures, anybody can understand that the government, the country is in a heavy financial difficulty. Therefore, I think the tax revenue, we have to increase the tax revenue.
All right. Who's liable to it and what's the tax base?
Yeah, if you'll see this bill, it says any person who is having a taxable turnover is liable. Then there's a registration threshold on turnover. Anybody who is meeting that registration threshold is a person who is liable to this particular tax.
All right, Mr. Ranavira, you just mentioned about a registration threshold. In that context, what is the registration requirement and the threshold?
As per this bill, they are proposing two thresholds. One is 120 million rupee turnover during the 1 year which is ending by 30th of June 2022. During that year, if you'll meet 120 million turnover, then you are supposed to get the registration. The second threshold is in future, after implementing this tax, for any quarter, if you'll in turnover go beyond 30 million per quarter, then immediately you have to get the registration. That registration to be obtained within 15 days of that date.
This bill seems to have covered a range of industries. Mr. Ranavira, would you like to give an insight to what these industries are?
Basically, they have covered 4 industries. One is import, then manufacturing, then service providing, including financial services. Then the fourth one is trading, that is wholesale and retail trading. All these 4 sectors are covered with this law. By seeing these 4 sectors, we can understand that the export sector is exempted or excluded from this particular tax.
We understand that the tax rate is at 2.5%, which is I would say material, especially in this particular period of time for any enterprise. Aren't there any concessions on the basis for certain margin-driven sectors like traders?
We'll take each sector separately. If you take the import sector, importers at the time of clearance of their goods, they have to pay on their total value. Then in the field of manufacturing, they have to pay only 85% of the turnover. Only on 85% of the turnover. If you take the service sector, they are supposed to pay on 100% of the turnover. But in the case of a trading, because we have included wholesale and retail trade in both, in the case of trading, Agency distribution work, in the case of distributors, they are supposed to pay only on 50% of the turnover. Then in the case of other traders, they are supposed to pay only on 25% of the turnover. Likewise, for these sectors, they have given some type of concession.
Mr. Ranavira, how often should this tax be paid and what are the tax return filing requirements?
That's a very vital question. Now, what is the period covered with this? As per this law, for every quarter, you are supposed to pay by 20th of the immediate following month of the end of the quarter. Then, by 20th, the same day, you are supposed to file the quarterly tax return. Those are the target dates of making the payment and filing the tax return.
Now, we have got an overall idea about this new tax. In abridged form, we call it SSCL. Would you please elaborate a bit on the possible impact of this tax on the businesses as well as the consumer?
Now, this is the most difficult period we have faced. As a result, definitely we have to think about the effect of this tax to the business people as well as the general public, the consumers. Now what will happen, this tax, the biggest issue in this tax is that cascaded effect, not like in the case of VAT. Now in the case of VAT, there's a facility of claiming the input tax. But in this case, no facility of claiming the input tax. Now if we'll take a person like importer at the time of import paying 2.5% on the import value. Then if he'll sell in the retail market, when he is selling in the retail market, he has to take the 25% of the turnover, and on that 25% of the turnover, he has to pay again 2.5%. That means the import time he is paying on the entire value. Then after keeping a profit when he is selling, he has to take 25% of the turnover and make the payment. Then in the case of in between, if there's a distributor, now local manufacturing distributor, there's another issue. Now suppose a local manufacturer manufacture and sell it to a distributor, then the manufacturer has to pay this on 85% of the turnover. Then the distributor has to pay on 50% of the turnover. Then a retailer is purchasing, the market, some trader is purchasing this and selling. Then the retailer has to pay on 25% of the turnover. Likewise, every trading activity, a loading is there. Ultimately, who is bearing this loading? Now, ultimately, the price will go up with all these tax loading, as there's a cascaded effect because there's no input tax. Now with that situation, as we know, everybody are in a difficult situation. Therefore, this will be the overall, the prices of domestic consumption goods and services will go up by 2.5% plus. It may be 3%, 4% or 5% even.
Mr. Ranavira, thank you very much. So we have come to the conclusion of this session. We just wanted to give an insight to our members as well as the general public on the new tax introduced.